Looking for real stories that lift you up? Welcome to Inspire and Impact, the podcast where purpose meets perseverance. This is where transformation begins and your story continues.
Welcome to the Inspire and Impact podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Rosenstein. The show features real conversations with thought leaders, healers, entrepreneurs, and creatives who share journeys of growth, purpose, and making a meaningful impact. Today, I have the honor of interviewing Daniel Baker. Daniel, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you. And thank you, Daniel. Great to be here.
I like your name, so
I like yours.
So can you maybe share with the audience a little bit about your background and, where you came from and how you got to where you are today?
Absolutely. So really at my core, my heart of heart, I am a gamer. I like video games, and I come from the corporate background. So kind of the corporate world, went to, did all the things that you were supposed to, right? I went to college and then wasn't sure what to do. Went back to school, got my MBA, and then got out of that. And they said, you got to get a real job. Gaming's not going to pay the bills. So I got a real job, and I worked for a big Fortune 500 company as a manager, and then did that for about 15 years, and then realized it's just, it started out good, but like all things, it just kind of finally got to the point where I was just burned out, and corporate life just wasn't for me. So now I kind of transitioned into, being a solopreneur, entrepreneur, and, have a coaching business and really going back to my roots and helping gamers and really helping gamers, understand and realize their full potential, and helping them with, teaching them leadership skills, problem solving, all these kind of, career skills that they have, that they need, and helping them, reach those heights that they're looking for.
So what inspired you to start viewing like gaming as like a leadership training tool versus just, having fun?
Yeah, because games are fun. Absolutely. And using it as a teaching tool, I know is kind of different, that not a lot of people think about. But gaming to me is just such a powerful medium that we can do so many things with. And for me, it was the moment during that, that 15-year corporate career where I got to a point where like I said, I was doing what you were supposed to. And one of those times was looking to move up the corporate ladder, because that's what you're supposed to do, right? So I went into my boss's office and I said, hey, I had the confidence enough to be like, hey, I think I deserve a promotion. I'd like to be promoted. And he kind of thought about it for a second, and he's, Daniel, we just don't see your leadership potential. And I was crushed. I was devastated. And so I just went home thinking, I just don't understand this corporate leadership thing. I'm going to have to figure this out, and it's going to be annoying. I don't know what they're looking for. And at the same time, when I was going home, of course, I was playing games. And I was playing a game at the time, for those that know the games, Star Wars: The Old Republic, which is a big MMO, like millions of players, played it like, at its height, years ago. And we were doing the hardest content you could do at the time, right? This nightmare difficulty, as it's called. And for those that don't know, in this game, like other MMOs, it was like a team of, say, I think it was 8 people, and they could, just real people from around the world, and you would do this super hard content together. And if you fail, there's 10 to 15 minute fights that you have to be perfect. And if at any point you fail, your character, everybody dies, you have to restart and do the fight again. And so we wiped, as we say, everybody died, meaning it's a wipe. And we wiped countless times, and we fought this guy for weeks, right? We just a few hours a day, not even every day, just like 2, maybe 3 times a week. And then finally, at some point, we did it. We finally beat the guy. And I remember, being the leader of these raids, and they turned to me and they're like, oh my gosh, Daniel, that was amazing. Thank you for leading us. You've been such a great leader. They didn't say guild leader. They didn't say raid leader, as it's called in the MMOs. They said leader. And that's when it kind of clicked. And I was like, wait a minute. Leadership is leadership, regardless of where you develop it, find it. And I was like, wait, how can I use this leadership that I learned in a game and apply it to my day job, apply it to my career? And so sure enough, I started just reframing things in my mind, right? It's not the pieces. So like I took the gaming, I took the leadership aspect. So it's not like I was trying to like push buttons and hit my mouse a certain way to try to win at the game of, you know, business at work. No, that's not what I'm saying. But I'm taking all the leadership aspects that I, you know, as far as, you know, working with my team, you know, getting into the details, what's working, what's not, and then using those same kind of frameworks in my job. And I started leading cross-functional teams. And sure enough, in a short, like 3 months of doing this, I was able to earn the promotion and a 30% raise on top of it that I was looking for. And I attribute that to video games. So afterwards, it was just, you know, working through that and, you know, having that experience is fantastic. And then in the back of my mind, it was like, how can I share this? Because I know there's other gamers that went through the exact same thing, that their bosses, they're trying to move up in their career, they're hitting that glass ceiling, and it's just like, how do I break through? And I want to be there to help share that, say, because you play games, you actually have the skills that these, you know, recruiters, that these bosses, that these corporate leaders are looking for. You just need to reframe it just slightly, and you have these skills. So I'm here to share those.
That's amazing. I would have never thought, like before I talked with you, that any type of like video game, you know, playing had anything to do with like corporate leadership. So you really blew my mind away when I first met you a few weeks ago when we first talked. So I found it extremely interesting. And you definitely have a very unique approach to like video gaming and everything. Can you maybe share with like our audience like a real life example, like a very specific skill, like a specific event as well, that like where you learn like in the game that helped you serve a very specific work related challenge?
Yeah, there's definitely a few examples that come to mind. So I had, you know, my personal example, of course, but I think even outside of myself, like looking at kind of the bigger, gaming kind of community, the bigger gaming audience, I think my favorite example is a game called Fold It. And for those that haven't heard of Fold It, it was actually created, I believe, by the University of Washington. And it was a game, but it has like real world, I guess, physics to it, where it's about folding proteins, right? It's, developed by these biology professors, really. And they were having a trouble with folding of proteins. And folding proteins, from what I understand, is a very kind of intuitive process. The human mind works very well at folding proteins. Computer models and AI really don't know how to do it well. So they really needed humans, they needed people to actually do the folding of proteins. And they decided to kind of crowdsource, the developing or the modeling of these different protein folds. And there was a particular example that stumped scientists. So again, this was probably more than 10 years ago at this point, but there was an issue that the scientists were having with HIV/AIDS medication, right? There was, I guess for those that maybe remember back in the day, like early 2000s, like HIV/AIDS was, terrible. Like it was epidemic levels. And then it started to taper off. And for those that don't know, it was because of this game. Because what had happened is that scientists were stumped for 10 years on how to fold these proteins in such a way that they could develop the right medication to combat HIV/AIDS. So they decided to put it into a game. They decided to put it into Fold It. They're like, here's the protein that we're trying to get to. Here's what we're trying to do. Here's what it is. Here's what we're trying to get to. How do we get it to work? And sure enough, they put it in the game. And instead of, for the 10 years that it took the scientists, gamers solved it in 10 days after the game came out, after this problem was put in. So this, to me, just showcases the power of gamers' minds and their problem-solving abilities, right? Because as gamers, we play games for fun, but one of the key skills that every gamer has, right? If there's one skill that every gamer has, it's problem-solving, because we do it for fun, right? We play games because we enjoy them, but they're all like little obstacles, little challenges, little puzzles to solve. So sure enough, when we get a hold of something where there's a challenge that takes a creative solution, gamers can do it so well. So 10 years of progress done in 10 days. And so sure enough, they were able to use that what gamers had developed in the game, and they were able to create the medication for HIV/AIDS that has since, not obviously cured it at this point, for those that know, but has severely, limited the amount of cases and the implications of having HIV/AIDS.
You see, and it contributed to the progress in some of the medication.
Exactly. Yep. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't done a lot of research about that, but I did hear something along those lines. So I'll definitely check out a little bit more about that. It sounds really interesting. And that there's real life applications outside of the gaming world to contributions from gamers. I want to ask you, what do you think is some of the biggest misconceptions people have about gamers in the professional world? Do people see gamers as people like loners, antisocial, or
Yeah. And then, so yeah, I definitely want to answer that. So to the previous point, I just want to make sure is one thing clear, because I know some people have researched it as far as what is Foldit and how does it all work, and it is a great example of also gamification, right? The art of turning something, adding it more game-like mechanics to something to make it more fun, engaging, and therefore actually succeed. But I do want to point out too that yes, Foldit has a lot of gamification, and that's kind of the whole point. But it was when they interviewed the people that actually did it in those 10 days versus the people that took a little bit longer, it was the gamers that did it the fastest. And so that's, I think, what's less reported. So that's why I wanted to make sure that I can be that sounding board to say it was gamers that did it first. But it is very much a gamification success as well. To that end, when we talk about gamers and the stereotypes, though, like you're saying, like how is gaming seen? And you kind of hit the nail on the head where it is seen. It is the stigma, I guess, of gaming, that in the professional world, that people see it as you're the loner in your parents' basement, that you're eating Cheetos, drinking Mountain Dew. And while I will say that obviously there's some people that do that, sure, but the overwhelming majority don't. The overwhelming majority of people are just, your average, guy, your average girl that are just, do as a hobby, right? It's there for fun. It's no different than, any other hobby to me, as far as just, the level of engagement, the level of fun that you're having. But for some reason we stigmatize games, which I always felt was kind of bizarre, because why is it that I can play, why is it seen bad? Why is it seen as a waste of time that I could spend 3 hours playing a game, but then other people are binging Netflix for 8 hours and then going to bed? And it's, wait a minute, like, how was that any better or worse than what I'm doing? And I would argue that gaming is actually more useful, because when you're watching something, when you're watching TV, watching Netflix or any of the streaming services, your mind's kind of switched off. You're just kind of consuming the content. To me, it's no different than doom scrolling on your phone. But with gaming, it's actually engaging your mind, right? Because you have to input into the game to actually get something to happen. So your brain is always active, and for that reason, the crazy thing about it is that it's just so much more useful as a result that nobody sees. Because there's now studies that have been done that, like, kids that play video games are much more intuitive. They're better problem solvers, like I mentioned before. And it goes to the other side, like in nursing homes. Like they've studied that if you have video games in nursing homes, it reduces, Alzheimer's and dementia, because your brain is more active and it stays active. And so you can avoid these kind of ailments later in life as well, because your mind is active. So the whole idea in kind of corporate structure to say that, gaming is bad, gaming is stigmatized, it doesn't make sense to me. Because anything else, like, people are worried about gaming addiction, or you waste your time. You can do anything too much and it be bad, right? Take any hobby. If it affects your work, if it affects the rest of your life, then that's a problem. And yes, gaming can have that happen, but to me, it's seemingly no more or less than some of the other hobbies out there. So it's like, why is this one just seen so bad? I think that's the stigma we need to change.
Why do you think gamers underestimate their value, from their own gaming skills?
This is where I definitely have been the sounding board trying to help gamers with this exact problem, because so many gamers, I think, hear that negativity from the media, from corporate, from wherever, that says that your gaming skills are not valuable. Your gaming is a waste of time, right? So they hear that message over and over, and it gets pounded into them. And I think that they, unfortunately, without realizing it, they kind of accept that. And where I want to share the message is that that's not how it works. Because basically the simple message is you are you. And by that I mean there's so many gamers, and I'm guilty of this in the past myself, where your corporate self, your work self, is different from your home/gaming self. So while you might behave a little bit differently whether you're at work or at home, right? So that's kind of normal. But I think gamers, it's much more extreme, to the point of, no, you can bring your skills with you, like, because you're you. So in the same example, like where I was able to have leadership potential because I've led raids in a game, there's so many gamers that completely dissociate that dissociate what they do in a game versus real life. And I mean, I understand why, because in a game, it's it's its own self-contained game world. But where the magic is if you can extract like the skills out of it, to say, okay, just because you're doing this, like, you're learning something. And there's like moments that occur, and I think in every gamer's life, that for those gamers that you probably resonate with this, where you might notice that something a little bit better than somebody else that doesn't play, or you can get to a solution a little bit faster than other people, that problem solving, or you just have a certain knowledge that just nobody seems to understand. And it's this kind of mindset that we as gamers just don't understand, because it's just been so ingrained at us that it's not useful, because our gaming mind should stick to the game, right? And it's what that is that when you feel like you're like getting things are clicking for you faster, that's because you're a great problem solver. And so when other people you feel like aren't keeping up in certain regards, that's because that's your superpower from being a gamer. And it's just really exploring that and pulling that out of the game is what's so important, that I think gamers have not been doing.
How can somebody like shift their mindset from thinking I'm just playing video games to actually saying I'm actually building like real life skills that I can apply to outside like the video game world?
As far as how they can do it,
Yeah, how can they shift their mindset? I'm saying, like, I'm just playing Mario Brothers or whatever game, or
Yeah, and so definitely something I help with, and to give kind of maybe one of the tools that to kind of start out. So I have a tool called like basically the real life skill tree. And for those that play games, right, you have a skill tree where you can kind of pick your skills, right, and to make your characters more powerful. And it's what we do with this kind of situation, I would say. So like to kind of walk you through it, it'd be choose a game that's either your favorite game or a game that you spend a lot of time in, that you've played a lot, right? So choose that game. So you write that down. Okay, I have this game. And what do you do in the game? So write down what kind of activities you do. And then after that, you think about, okay, what skills, if you had to put, real life skills names to those activities, what would they be? And then that's when you start thinking about it. You're like, wait a minute, just because I'm doing, I'm playing Mario Brothers and I'm like hopping up and down on things, it's okay. I'm, using hand-eye coordination. Okay. And I'm able to find where certain things are. Okay, well, I'm good at pattern recognition, right? So there's little things like, just having, simple hand dexterity, right? So now maybe you work well with tools. Maybe that's a skill that you can develop, that you enjoy working with your hands. If you play games, you usually like a controller, mouse, and keyboard. And then, like I said, the problem solving, being able to say, okay, where pattern recognition, where are things happening on the screen? How do I avoid these things? Because part of that is problem solving, to say, okay, I have an obstacle and I have to overcome. How can I get around this? And then if you play any of the kind of creative games like Minecraft or something, there's a lot of creativity there. Like, how do you build a certain structure? I want to build a castle in Minecraft. It's like, now you have a little bit of multitude of skills as far as, not only problem solving to kind of figure out how to do it, where to do it, but you kind of like branch a little bit into like other things like, aesthetic, design, whether it's even architectural, interior design. There's so many little things, and you can kind of tell, what do you enjoy doing? Do you like, if for those creatives, do you like building the outside of the house? Do you like building the interior and decorating the house? Those are different skills, and those can affect different ways in the world. Because and the last piece of it is, okay, now imagine those in a real world scenario, right? So taking that same Minecraft example, I like to make my room in Minecraft really cool, the whole interior decorating. Well, we just said that's interior decorating, right? So think about that in the real world. Do you enjoy at least the concept of interior decorating? Because you might suddenly be a lot better at interior decorating than maybe your friends, the colleagues. And you're like, you know what? I cultivated this interest and this ability in a game, in Minecraft. So as an example. So really it's going through the structure, right? It's identifying the games that you love, especially the ones you spend a lot of time in, understanding what activities you do in the game, and then associating each of those activities with a real world skill. And that'll bring the magic kind of out of the game into the real world for your own, activities.
You're really making me think, as we continue talking about the subject, that there really are a lot of like skills people can either develop from gaming, or you should even figure out what subjects they're interested in.
Exactly.
I'm surprised that it actually hasn't been become more widespread, of gamification and utilizing, skills from gaming, because there are a lot of gamers out there.
There are, and I feel like I'm the only one talking about this. There's definitely a lot of in the gamification space where it's
Right.
more like, how do we use game mechanics to affect, behavior, right? To drive more engagement, to drive more sales, whatever it is. So like gamification is kind of taken this kind of corporate approach, whereas I want to take the gaming side of it and put it in a more personal approach. So yes, gamification is powerful, and some of my program does include that, because it is, of course, very helpful and to drive that behavior and get you to take the action that you want to take. But really making it that personal level, to make it that, it's really about you as the individual and how you can grow, how you can earn more. Whatever it is your goal is, you can do it because you're a gamer.
It's really cool. I mean, can you maybe explain what's the connection between building self-confidence, playing video games, versus like the self-confidence you have like in a corporate meeting room?
Yeah, the biggest thing to me is that difference that we have for our gaming life and our corporate life. Because in the gaming, so again, to bring that transferable skill in, it's like we have to imagine it outside the game. Because in a game, it's so easy to be confident for kind of two reasons. Where we understand in a game that it's, quote, not real, and so whatever happens to your character gets hit, your character loses health, your character dies. Hit reset, reload, go again. Doesn't matter. So the idea of failure is not really an issue for a gamer, because we understand that we can continue. What's important about that, I think the second point, is that we use failure as a learning experience. Failure is a tool, right? When we fail in a game, we say, why did that happen? As most gamers do. So some people, you get frustrated, you might throw the controller, but in the end, you might get to the point where you say, okay, what did I do wrong? Assuming it was your fault and not the game. But if it's you, how can I improve? How can I do better? And we don't necessarily say this consciously, but in the back of our mind, sometimes it's the challenge of it to say, okay, I'm going to beat this game. And your mind will work, be like, oh, if I'm going to beat this challenge because it's making me mad, your mind's going to think, okay, how do I do this? I got to get around this and I got to go over here. So we use failure as a learning experience. But then suddenly we get in the real world, and corporate environments are like, you can't fail. Like, failure is looked down upon. This has been kind of the situation for decades, right? So I think understanding, and fortunately, I think some of that is changing slowly. And I think gamers can be at the head of that to say failure is a teaching tool. Failure is just an experience. And I think in the entrepreneur world, especially, some of the big, entrepreneurs, they'll even tell you like the adage, fail fast, right? The best thing for an entrepreneur is either you succeed fast or you fail fast. Having it tread just kind of, in the middle, treading water, that's the worst place to be as a new business or an entrepreneur, because you need it to succeed, or you need to know what's not working and have it fail and then change and then start over, or just massive overhaul to something. So in gaming, we do that. And that's what we have to bring to our professional lives. So having that confidence to walk into that meeting to say, it's okay to fail. That'd be the biggest advice I have, is to say, it's okay to fail. Depending on the company, depending on the culture, they might not like that as much, but you'll start to notice that if you fail and you have at least, some support in the corporate level, in the corporate structure, that people will start to respect you more, because even though you failed, you'll learn from it and you'll do better. And people will see that. People see the improvement. And everybody loves an underdog story, right? The guy that starts out nothing to his name and is able to grow and to change and to get big and to win. So I think that's every gamer's story that they can do in the corporate world, is that they start as the underdog, and they're going to use that experience, and they're going to use failure to learn, to grow, to move up.
I mean, have you ever helped anybody in the gaming world, like with imposter syndrome? Because I know a lot of people talk about that, like imposter syndrome. It seems to be like a big issue that a lot of people are talking about these days.
Right. Yeah. Imposter syndrome, I know, is everywhere. And I know in the past I've suffered from that as well. And I would say for imposter syndrome is so common in the gaming world as well, because again, I think it is that dissociative kind of situation where your identity in the gaming world is different from your identity in the corporate world. And it's really kind of merging those together to say you can be confident. You are confident. We just need to apply it slightly different. So imagining imposter syndrome, I'm saying really you need to look at the successes that you've had. Because again, if you have successes in gaming, which I know you have, you can win. You can succeed. You can get better because you've beaten games. You've progressed significantly in the games that you've played. That's growth. So the fact that you've done this in games means that you can do this in real life. And as they say, imagination, your brain does not know the difference between imagination and reality. So if you mentally perceive it to be happening, your brain doesn't know the difference. So I think the term is that you get the wins in advance, right? How do you fight imposter syndrome? You basically tell your mind and you imagine the success, and you've already done it in games. So just do the same thing in life. So you just take some time to imagine what the win state would look like in whatever you're doing in your job, in your corporation, your business. What does it look like to win? And imagine getting that, imagine attaining that, and do that multiple times. And again, your mind says, oh, we're winning. And now you are winning in life. Your mind believes that you're winning in life. So you don't have to only think that you're winning in games, because you can win at life too. And that, I think, is the biggest and most powerful tool that I've seen to get you out of imposter syndrome.
Really cool. I mean, these are things that I would have never thought about as even like possible. Because I mean, I'm a life coach as well, and a lot of people talk about imposter syndrome. I never even thought about, hey, gaming can actually help you with that. But I mean, now that we're talking about it, I see that it is possible. So it really is cool. There's definitely a lot of interesting things to think about when it comes to gaming. What do you think are maybe some like the biggest transferable skills that gamers can develop and transfer it into like the corporate world? If you had to guess, like, what are the top 2 or 3 skills? What do you think they are?
Yeah, I think really, to me, the number one by far, I think, is problem solving, because every gamer has that. So I think that's the initial one I would say. So and that's really powerful for really any job. Any job, there's going to be issues, aka obstacles, aka puzzles to overcome and to beat. So problem solving is the number one skill I would think is transferable from gaming. I think number 2 would be leadership, because leadership is not only just leading people, right? Because then that's definitely part of it, but just simply being able to, kind of above problem solving, I would say, as far as, different skills, because leadership can encompass a lot of different kind of skills to support it. So really just kind of the leadership sense of being able to, move toward a goal. So not only solving the initial problem, but kind of looking ahead, having that vision to be like, okay, well, I'm overcoming the one obstacle, but what is the goal? Where am I going? How do I get there? And trying to be more efficient about it, trying to utilize your resources. So all these kind of things, huge and part of leadership. So if I could encompass a lot of those kind of skills under leadership, that's what I would say. And I think really teamwork as well, because a lot of the multiplayer games, especially if you play MMOs, if you play any multiplayer game, you have to work as a team. And the only way you win is if all of you win together, right? So being able to communicate effectively, that'd be kind of like maybe number 4, is to say, we need to be able to communicate to understand, okay, what are we going to do? What are we going to do in this situation? And really that teamwork to being able to say, this is how we're going to get it done. So I think that's a big one to me.
Cool. So how can somebody take these transferable skills that they learned from gaming and either communicate or express like these skills on a resume? I mean, because obviously they're not going to be, if they're applying for a corporate job, they're not going to put on a resume like, I was a winner at this particular video game. I don't know.
Yeah, Minecraft, superstar. No. I beat Nightmare Kefis.
See that as a skill,
Absolutely. I think when you're talking like resume, if you're talking like, getting in your footing in the door in a corporate environment, corporate setting, it's really taking those skills and, like I said, going through that skill tree exercise to say, what are the real world skills associated with the activities I do in a game? Because those are the skills that you put down on your resume, on the skill portion of LinkedIn, right? If you're on LinkedIn, it's so like every gamer, I don't care who you are, if you've played games, you should put problem solving as one of your skills, 100%. And I'd say highly likely that you put leadership and teamwork on there too. But there's just, again, if you go through the exercise and you come up with more skills, different skills, that especially if they're relatable to the job that you're looking for, absolutely put those down. Because what you have in gaming matters. I can't stress that enough. What you do in gaming matters. So putting those skills on your resume, absolutely. And then if you get asked, I mean, you can go through gaming examples, and you could, if you wanted to massage it slightly, you could make it slightly more vague, I guess, to be like, yep, I have like there are specific challenges, there were certain obstacles in my way, and I was able to overcome them because I have this attention to detail and this problem solving ability. So I would say I want to get over the stigma eventually. Like my goal is to make so you could go in an interview and be like, I've played these games, I've beat these games, therefore I know what I'm talking about. That'd be like the dream scenario where I would love to go, is to say, yes, these are the games I play and this is why I know how to do this. I'd say we'll get there eventually.
What's your take on gamification versus like skill translation? And what's why does this distinction like really matter?
Yeah, because gamification, we talked a little bit about, as far as gamification has been used more of a corporate tool, I guess is maybe the phrase to use. Because again, gamification drives behavior. Now we love this in the corporate environment because we want more sales or we want more customer engagement, whatever it is. But driving behavior can also affect the self, can also affect how we do things. So gamification is definitely useful in both aspects of it. But then when we talk about transferable skills, that's a little different, right? Because using gamification, even for our personal lives, is just making it so that we take action, right? So we drive the behavior of we want to take action toward our goals. Transferable skills And so what I teach, I use a little bit of gamification, of course, but the transferable skills piece of it is to really say, here's what you're doing in other aspects of your life, aka gaming, and bringing those skills with you into the other aspects, right? Whether it is corporate or whether it is, other aspects of your personal life. Being able to use your skills and basically kind of re-merge, I like to say, your identity, your being, to say, I'm a gamer, but I'm also, a corporate employee. I'm also professional, but you're the same person. So transferable skills is basically utilizing those skills again in a game, from a game, in the rest of your life.
So how do people really quantify the value of their in-game leadership skills that they've learned?
As far as quantifying it, that's a good question. So I think the quantifying part of it is really just kind of understanding it. Again, the if you want to quantify it, I would say skills on a resume, to say this is how it looks on paper. And then, over time, you'll start to see just kind of different opportunities or different activities that you'll be able to do as a result of your gaming, as a result of your transferable skills. So I think you'll see certain aspects, certain activities get easier as a result because you've transferred these skills. So things that were once hard, things that you didn't understand, will suddenly become easier, more clear, more intuitive to you, because you're using your gaming mind, to really understand and tackle certain problems.
So what was the moment you really knew that you had to leave your corporate world and start your Dragonmore XP?
Yeah, that's another fun story, because understanding the transferable skills is definitely this is the one story about getting promoted and beating the raid boss. But but after that, I was still working the corporate job, right? So at some point, something else happened that was interesting. So I worked in supply chain, right? And I worked with Japanese suppliers or overseas suppliers, which meant that occasionally we had to have conference calls, whether it was super early in the morning or late at night. And more often, with the time difference in Japan, it was, we had to do 7, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night calls. Okay, so we're just doing these nightly calls. It sucks. There was one particular instance, I think, where this happened. It was, I want to say it was, the supplier dropped the ball. Won't say too many details there, but it was basically they effed up, and we basically had to get on them hard about it, and we had to do nightly conference calls. It was usually maybe once a week, but no, we were doing conference calls every night for 2 weeks straight. So those 2 weeks, I basically didn't have a personal life. It sucked, because it was all right, we'll go home, have dinner, immediately get back on another call. It was terrible. And so after these, during these 2 weeks of just monotonous calls every night, just to basically tell the supplier they effed up and how to fix it. At one point during the day, so I was at my cube, and my boss comes over, and at least I had a nice boss, so I had a cool boss, and so I was just hanging out with him, and we're just kind of chatting, and I had to vent, I had to complain. I was like, man, I can't believe the supplier did this. They screwed us over. They did it, whatever. I'm just going off, just kind of venting. And he's a cool guy, so he's just taking it. He's and I'll never forget what he said, because I kind of finished my rant, and he's like, Daniel, this is the life we chose. And I said, yeah, but inside I was like, hell no, I did not choose this. Are you kidding me? I was screaming internally. I was like, there's no way. I didn't choose it. I didn't choose for the supplier to F me over. I didn't choose to be in this position. And then I realized after that, I did choose. I chose by not choosing. And I just felt like I was on autopilot, just doing this corporate thing that was just getting more and more draining, more and more soul crushing. Because I like working with the suppliers, but they kept piling more responsibility. They kept, taking certain things away, and it just became more monotonous, more soul draining. So it was at that moment that I was like, I need to figure out how to get out of here. I need to figure out what to do. And I want to help gamers. Because I went back to that. I was like, wait a minute. So many people are making money, right? Like what I was told as a kid, get a real job. You won't make money in gaming. there's so many people making money in gaming. Not only is there game development, there's like the streaming right on Twitch and YouTube and everything where you could just play games and make money. That's definitely harder. And so I don't know if I would recommend that just to everybody starting out, but I did try that for a while. I was like, let me try this. And so sure enough, it was that moment though that I was like, I can't be in corporate America anymore. How do I change? How do I do this? And it was taking that idea of cultivating this gaming transferable skills and making this kind of personal development and leadership coaching business out of that. And it's been great so far.
So you can maybe explain a little bit more about your coaching program. How does it work for someone who wants to transition from just gaming to like real world leadership?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I've created this proprietary process, and so my coaching program, I call it the Skillcraft Mastery. So Skillcraft being a little combination of different gaming terms, and really, so what I created with Skillcraft is doing exactly what we've been saying, is a process by which you can take your gaming skills and, again, transferable skills into your corporate job, into your professional life, into, even your personal life if you wanted to. But really what I offer is like an 8-week, coaching program to really dive into what it is, like a one-on-one, with you. So I can look, exactly what your skills are. So exactly what games you play, and helping you cultivate and understand what skills you have as a result. And then again, that harder part of like, how do we get those into real life skills, and how do we start practicing that in a real world environment? And yeah, so this one-on-one coaching program that I do over 8 weeks really helps people transform that mindset and understand their leadership skills and potential at the end of those 8 weeks, that they can go off and, like I said, and the goal is to hopefully, like what I did, get that raise, get that promotion, or if you're earlier in your career, like even just land that job. So that's really what I'm here to do, what I'm here to serve, is help with this kind of leadership coaching program to help gamers.
Have you seen any surprising like industry or job roles where?
Oh gosh, that's it. One of the more interesting ones from one of my clients was, I guess, building materials. So I have a client who basically, works for like the back end, like kind of warehouse piece of a building company, and it's just amazing. So like he does inside sales, right, which means that he takes like the sales orders from, or how does he explain it? Transfers like the orders around from what the outside, what people actually sell, and making sure that he gets the right materials ordered for whatever the projects are. And really, for that kind of a business, and it was like kind of a warehouse business too. And so really understanding kind of on the warehouse side of it, the gaming skills that kind of came to life was the kind of resource management. Right, there's a lot of games that include some kind of inventory and resources, or even these kind of like simulation or city builder games too, where you have a limited amount of resources and you have to understand how to allocate that efficiently so that you can get the most output back. So he was able to use a lot of these resource skills. So he's played some similar games that I have. For those that know, like Satisfactory is like a factory building game. And it's about understanding like, how much material you have where, and making sure it goes to the right place. And I'm like, that lends itself to an actual warehouse. So it doesn't have to be just, all, just simple problem solving, on your computer in front of a desk or something, like trying to do Excel sheets or something like that. It was like, oh no, just like back in the warehouse and just understanding where things are and how to move things efficiently. Resource management from video games.
It's really like amazing. I mean, you're really stretching my mind here in this conversation about all these new possibilities I never would have thought about before. It's really, really intriguing. Can you maybe share some like the biggest transformational stories you've had some of your clients go through like your coaching program? That you realized about like how great their gaming skills really are?
Yeah, it's funny enough. It was actually that same guy that I was just mentioning that did the warehouse job. So he actually, unfortunately, so I mean, things happen, right? I was working with him, and actually during the program, he actually got laid off from his job. So it was actually so unfortunate circumstances, company downsizing, and he went from being laid off and helped him with the skills again. Just okay. Now it's kind of pivoted from like how do we move up to like how do we get another job, but understanding those same gaming skills, those transferable skills, basically went from instead of from being laid off to he did get another job that was able to apply for, and utilizing the skills goes in with more confidence, more skills that he can kind of market himself with, and ended up earning, I think he said, $20K more at this new position, at this new job. So he went from being laid off to now earning $20K more at a new job. Again, by being able to put gaming skills as transferable skills on a resume.
That's really amazing. Congrats on helping that client with that. It really goes. That's a little testament to showing what you're doing is really working when you get that type of results. That's really. What do you think? There's any specific video games in particular that are really helpful in developing leadership skills? Can you maybe name a few games in particular you think playing those games that really help people build leadership skills? I think that it can be any particular game could be, people can develop leadership skills.
I think for leadership skills specifically, it'd be really there's not any one, right? There's so many, but I would say the MMOs, the big massive multiplayer online games, is definitely a great place to get leadership skills. If you play an online game, if you play World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy 14, these big online games, there's so many opportunities for leadership there because you're working with so many other people, and there's so many activities and so many challenges in those games that it's such a huge game as a result. But there's so many opportunities, I think, there for leadership as well.
Has there been any particular game that had the biggest impact on your own personal and professional life?
Oh gosh. For me, I think the biggest effect on, because usually the question comes up, what's your favorite video game? But yeah, that's a very good question though. What's been the biggest impact of a game? Oh gosh. If I really had to think about it, like I said, I think it was that Star Wars: The Old Republic, because that was where my story, right? That's where I discovered, I think, gaming leadership is leadership. So if I had to pick one, that would definitely be the most impactful. But also, so I'm trying to think of another example. I think skill-wise, I think I kind of mentioned, Satisfactory, which is a factory building game for those that have played, and being a supply chain background as well, it kind of fit in really well. So it kind of, as I was doing supply chain at my job, is when Satisfactory was out, and I was playing that, and they kind of helped each other, I guess, in that way. Whereas, okay, I would take what I learned in Satisfactory and I could apply that in my job, and then whatever I learned in supply chain, I could go back to the game and be like, oh, I could do it like this. And that was a fun example of where both of them kind of helped each other, the crossing between personal and professional, back and forth.
What has been your most proudest moment being a gamer?
Oh gosh! So besides the win in SWOTOR, that was a big one. That was a fun one too. I think the proudest moment, gosh, that's definitely at the top. I think part of it too is just sometimes it's just the fun of just hanging out with people. I remember, because sometimes you have to laugh at the mistakes too, because things happen. I was playing I'll say it was another one from SWOTOR that I loved, which is just a simple, we're all there, we're all trying to complete the objectives, complete the raid, and it's difficult, and like I said, somebody messes up, the whole thing wipes and you have to start all over again, so you can get kind of frustrated. But some of the fun moments though is that how I felt like I was kind of the glue that could keep people going, because there was definitely one time where we had somebody accidentally hit one of the things that we were supposed to protect, right? So he managed to destroy this, the shield that was protecting us, and we couldn't help but just laugh, right? Because it was this is the goal, we have to protect it, and he just punches the crap out of it and it destroys it. We're like, so many people would have gotten mad. I just start busting out laughing, and it was just kind of takes the whole vibe, the whole energy of the community, the group, in that direction to be like, this is fun. It's a game. We don't need to be frustrated because we died again, because we died in the most hilarious way possible. And it was just, making sure that, and I didn't even decide it as like consciously. It just, to me, that was just how I felt about the game and our team. It was just like, we're just here to have fun. And this happened. We definitely didn't beat the thing that time, but you know what? It was super fun and hilarious at the same time. It makes for a fun story.
What is it like you learned the most about yourself through like the fusion of gaming and leadership and building, all those like transferable skills?
Yeah, the thing I've learned about myself is just how powerful our identities are is amazing to me. So just understanding, I am a gamer, and what does that mean? And to me, it was just, wow, it was just understanding that you can enjoy your passions, your hobbies, and you don't have to feel guilty about it. That was the biggest thing, I think. Like I said, growing up in the 80s and 90s, where it was like, oh yeah, gaming was like, it's fun, it's super cool, but nobody took it seriously. There's no way you're going to do anything with it. And it kind of tapped down, some of the passion, I guess, for certain things, where understanding now that, it's the same. You don't have to be different. So really, if I had to boil it down to a word, I think it'd be my authenticity. To say I am a gamer, and that's who I am and who I want to be, and I don't have to apologize for being that. So that's been really cool, really powerful for me.
It's really amazing. I mean, everything you're saying, it's really mind blowing for me, because you're really making me think differently about. I mean, I used to be a gamer, and I personally stopped because I had that belief that gaming was just for fun entertainment, and now as an adult, all right, it's time to kind of move on to more adult things. I mean, that was my way of thinking. Like, you're kind of opening up to like a whole new way of thinking now.
You're gonna start playing games again. That's what we're talking.
Who knows?
Exactly. And that's really what I'm here to share, is that, you don't have to grow out of, having fun. Is basically, is kind of, if I had to distill it down, it's just because you become an adult doesn't mean you have to give up hobbies. You don't have to give up your sense of fun, your sense of play, your sense of, accomplishment that you have from games. You can do that. You don't have to get a new hobby, I guess is my point too. So for those that are transitioning, for those that are listening that are, young adult, that are like, all right, I have to put the games away because now I'm an adult. That's not true. You could be a gamer. It is okay. And in fact, you have awesome skills because you're a gamer.
So if you had 60 seconds to convince a non-gamer that like gaming builds like leadership and professional skills, what would you say?
Oh gosh. All right. In 60 seconds, I would say, so to a non-gamer.
A very short period of time. Because
I know. Right? So if I have to talk to a non-gamer, I would say, so in life, we have so many directions that we're pulled in. In life, we can get overwhelmed, we can get confused, and we're not sure where to go. But gaming has helped. So for those that play games, they get a very clear set of goals, a set of instructions, and they can complete the task. So gamers are task oriented. If you give them something to do, they can do it very easily. So they can be put to task. They problem solve. If you need a creative solution, gamers can do that because gamers do it for fun. Gamers, if I had to distill it, they're problem solvers because they do it for fun. The gamers are the best problem solvers in the world because they do it for fun every day. And if you need somebody to help you lead a team, I wouldn't pick anyone other than a gamer, because they have to do so many different things in a game, so many different aspects, so many different challenges that all have to come together. which is really what leadership is about. It's about understanding what resources you have, the people you have, and working with them to achieve a common goal. If you know somebody that plays an MMO, they can be a great leader.
What legacy do you and your Dragonmore program hope to have in both like the coaching and gaming world?
The legacy that I would love to leave is really changing that stigma around to say gaming matters. Gaming is useful. And the ultimate legacy that I would love to leave is to say people that play video games are just held in high regard, to the point of, if you wanted to recruit somebody, that you could put it on a resume and say, I'm a gamer, this is how many years I've been playing video games, and people would see that as, I know they have skills, I know they have use, I know they have value because they're a gamer. So it's changing this corporate mindset, changing the structure, and then changing the gamers themselves individually to know that they are more than they realize because they play games. I would love to be that person that everybody knows for that.
What advice would you give to somebody who's, a gamer, but they feel stuck in their job and their career?
There's so many different things. But so if I had to give one piece of advice, if you're feeling stuck, I would think, what is it that you want? It's very simple, but sometimes we don't ask ourselves. We forget. We're just on autopilot. That's because that's how I felt at the corporate job. After a while, it was like, I'm just on autopilot. And it wasn't until my boss told me, this is the life you chose, that it snapped. And I was like, wait a minute, I've been on autopilot. I got to change. So if I had to ask, is this the life you chose? Is this what you want? And let that be a wake-up call. Let that be a way to say, well, this isn't what I want. I want something else. And then part beyond that is to say, okay, identify that. And now make that your identity. Because whatever your identity is, there's no more powerful force in the world that I know of than your own personal identity. Because whatever you are, whatever you think you are, you will do that, you will go for that, and you will achieve that. So if you're feeling stuck, look where you want to be. Because if it's not, it sounds like it's not where you are right now. Look at what you want to do. And then get the wins in advance. Think about how it will be when you have that. So if you were that now, if you were where you want to be, and you're looking in the rearview mirror, you're looking behind you, what did it take to get to that point? And that will make it much more clear and much more powerful that you will take those actions to get that ideal state.
So Daniel, if somebody had like a question about our interview today, or they're interested in working with you, what are the best ways to reach you?
Guys, the best way to reach me would be through the website. So dragonmorexp.com. You can actually set up some time, directly with me on my calendar as well to talk if you want to, work through some of the questions that you have. There's also, you can go on your own little quest, your own little game to kind of discover kind of your level of leadership skills from games. So if you dragonmorexp.com/quest, you can actually take a little quest to see how the gaming works for you and how much of a leader you are through the games you play. But really the best way to connect with me is definitely through the website.
Daniel, do you have any final thoughts, comments, or anything else you'd like to share before we wrap up this podcast?
I think the last thing I'll say, and because it bears repeating, is that your gaming skills matter. So even though society may say that's not how it is, you're playing games, that's a waste of time. Don't listen, because nobody listened to the greats when they had great ideas. Nobody listened to Einstein. Nobody listened to, I tell you, Walt Disney. Here's one for you. Walt Disney, when he was making Disneyland, he didn't get the bank loan that he was looking to get. He went to multiple banks. He went to 10. He went to 20. He went to 100. They all said no. He went to 302 banks before they said yes, so that he could get the money to make Disneyland. And now we have Disneyland and Disney World. We have the craziest, some of these biggest theme parks in the world, all because he said, no, I'm not going to give up. And he went to 302 banks. So that is to say, sometimes it just takes perseverance, because you will get a lot of pushback. You will get a lot of no's. But because you're a gamer, you know that game over is not the end, because you can always reload, hit restart, and try again.
Well, that like gaming skills can bring, leadership and success in the corporate world and in the coaching world. So again, congratulations on figuring that out, because I think a lot of gamers that maybe still playing video games and still don't think they have any transferable skills. But Dan, I just wanted to thank you so much for coming on the podcast, and it was a really great conversation. It was very definitely an interesting and unique twist, a new approach to a way of thinking that I think more people should be talking about and sharing all your wisdom and everything with our audience today. I really appreciate that.
Absolutely. No, thank you, Daniel. Thank you for having me on this podcast so I could share this message. And so absolutely love what you're doing too, to really help get the message out and helping, your audience with everything you do too. It's been fantastic to watch too. So thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.